So much has changed in the race to the White House over the past few days. Donald Trump, now the likely nominee for the Republican Party. So what's next? Political analyst Laura Fink joins us this morning. And Laura, is this something really that anyone could have predicted?
Well, I think it was a confluence of a number of factors that a lot of people had a hard time predicting. The first is that Donald Trump would in fact be so strong, get so much media attention, and be willing to and able to woo the Republican electorate. The second is the weakness of the Republican field in general. 16 candidates and none of them could stop him. In addition, the Republican leadership waited a long time to weigh in, and that also helped Trump. And finally, fourth of all, the willingness of moderate Republicans to accept Donald Trump as the nominee. All of those things were not predicted. But in addition, the structure of the system, the Republicans consolidated their system so that, in fact, the calendar was truncated. It all happened really fast, where in previous years it was much more stretched out.
And talk about fast, with Ted Cruz, all the talk of the contested convention, and I think a lot of people thought he was going to stay in it a lot longer. Was Indiana just the breaking point for him?
Indiana was, in fact, Ted Cruz's Waterloo. And I think he saw that moving forward, he knew he wasn't going to win the 1,237 delegates outright, but he knew after Indiana he couldn't even make the case. In fact, the die was cast. So he ended up dropping out and didn't want to be the lone impediment to Trump gaining the nomination.
Now, Donald Trump, what's next for him? Any thoughts on who he should or who he could tap for VP?
Well, I think that there are a number of strong candidates. I think Chris Christie's early support probably puts him at the head of the line, but there are probably a number of others that he might consider. But it's unlike other years, the vice presidential nod is not something that a lot of active Republicans are seeking. And I think that speaks to how polarizing Donald Trump has been.
Now, Bernie Sanders, he is still in it, but what kind of chance does he have if he doesn't gain any of the support of the superdelegates?
Well, Bernie Sanders has to think about his legacy. Right now, he is prohibited from garnering the nomination. The superdelegates are strongly in Hillary Clinton's corner, and he needs to think about his movement. He originally ran, not because he thought he could viably win, but because he wanted to raise the issues that he felt that the Democratic Party and the presidential candidates this year should be considering. He succeeded beyond probably even his wildest expectations. However, he will be remembered by how he exits and how he projects unity with the party and how he ends this campaign about finance reform, about income inequality, and all of the things that his followers so love him for.
Do you expect a surprise dropout like what we saw with Ted Cruz?
I think Bernie continues to want to see his issues implemented into the Democratic platform. And the way that you do that is by continuing on to the convention. So I don't see him dropping out, which, by the way, is good news for down-ticket Democrats here in California, because we have a contested race at the top of the ticket for the first time. So I think Bernie Sanders will make an exit, but if you're a Democrat, you hope that he does so with grace.
Now, if it does come down to Trump versus Clinton, at this point, how would either side do?
Well, Trump v. Clinton, if we look at the polls right now, Donald Trump is 13 to 14 points behind. So Clinton does have a leg up. And I want to make a point about women in this electorate, because 70% of women have an unfavorable opinion of Trump. Now, they're 53% of the electorate. He has to change that number. He has to figure out how to bring some of those women back. Now, those folks that are part of the anti-Trump movement may see women as the ultimate backstop to stop him. So where all of the Republicans running for office couldn't do it, it's possible that the women in the electorate may be that force.
Now, knowing that, do you think we could see, I don't want to say a quieter Trump, but maybe a different side, knowing that he is now the likely nominee and he has to overcome that barrier?
Well, in the words of my second grade teacher, what Trump has lacked up until this point is self-control. You need to be disciplined as a candidate. And while he has done some of these things on purpose, you can't help but wonder, is every move that he makes calculated, or is he often shooting from the hip? He's going to have to reel that back, and he's going to have to control himself, because in order to successfully pivot off of possibly the most extreme statements we've seen in a generation, that's some work to do, and it's going to take a very exacting control.
And then lastly, there was talk of him coming to town. He might come to town a little later on this month. Is it worth a visit to California for him now being the only one in the race?
Well, I think what he can do is, because we do have an actual election and Ted Cruz will be on the ballot, John Kasich will be on the ballot in spite of them suspending their campaigns, he can create that energy. He often will get coverage because of the wild crowds that he brings together. And I think he wants to continue to stay in the media spotlight, which is earned media, free media, as we say in the business, but also so that he can show that his support is strong.
All right, Laura, a lot happening. We'll just have to wait and see what happens next. Thanks so much.
All right, thanks, Melissa.
I'm Melissa Masiha with this week's San Diego Newsmakers for 10 News.